Captain Vex lay motionless among the debris of his crashed scout ship, purple blood seeping from a gash across his thorax. The battle had been brutal, his squadron decimated, and now here he was, stranded on a primitive world his people had been warned to avoid, Earth. His three-fingered hand trembled as he tried to activate his emergency beacon. The device sparked and died. So too would he realized, as the toxins from the crash slowly invaded his system. The humans would find him eventually, and he had heard the stories. They would dissect him, study him, perhaps even mount his exoskeleton as a trophy. That's what his commanders had always taught. A sound. Footsteps approaching. Vex closed his inner eyelids, keeping only his outer ones open to slits. Through the haze of pain, he saw them. Two humans picking their way through the wreckage. One male, one female. The male carried something in his hands. "Tom, over here," the female called out. "It's alive." "Careful, Anna," the male Tom replied. "We don't know what it is." Vex tried to reach for his sidearm, but his limbs refused to obey. The pain was overwhelming now. If they were going to kill him, he hoped they would do it quickly. The female approached, her face showing an expression Vex couldn't decipher. Was it the bloodlust his species had been warned about? She knelt beside him, and he braced for the killing blow. Instead, she pulled off her outer covering, a jacket he would later learn, and pressed it against his wound. "It's bleeding badly," she said to her companion. "Get the first aid kit from the truck." Vex couldn't comprehend what was happening. These humans were helping him. It contradicted everything he had been taught about their species. The archives described them as savage, territorial, unpredictable. A species to be studied from afar, but never engaged. Tom returned with a container and began removing items. Anna spoke softly, sounds that Vex's translator implant struggled to process in his damaged state. "It's okay," she said. "We're trying to help you." His vision blurred. The last thing Vex saw before losing consciousness was the concerned face of the human female leaning over him. He awoke in an unfamiliar place, a small structure with primitive technology surrounding him. His wound had been cleaned and bandaged, and an improvised IV of clear fluid dripped into a vein in his arm. They had somehow determined his basic biology correctly enough to help rather than harm. Tom entered carrying a tray. "You're awake. That's good. We weren't sure if you'd make it." Vex's translator was functioning better now. "Why? Help me?" he managed to ask, his voice rasped. Tom set the tray down. On it was a bowl of liquid that steamed in the cool air. "'Cause you needed it," he said simply, as if it were the most obvious thing in the universe. "Your species, enemy of mine," Vex said. Tom frowned. "We've never seen anything like you before. How could we be enemies?" It didn't make sense. The archives were explicit. Humans were dangerous, willing to destroy anything they didn't understand. Yet here he was, being cared for like one of their own. Over the next several days, as Vex recovered, he learned more about these humans. They lived far from the main human settlements, preferring the quieter life of what they called a homestead. They had seen his ship crash and had come to investigate. "We couldn't just leave you there," Anna explained as she changed his bandages. Her touch was gentle, careful not to cause him pain. Any decent person would have done the same. Decency. The concept existed in his culture, but it was reserved for one's own kind. The idea of extending it to an unknown, potentially dangerous alien was revolutionary. On the seventh day, Vex was strong enough to stand. Tom had been working on repairing his communications device, using Earth materials and remarkable intuition about alien technology. "I think this might work now," Tom said, handing over the cobbled-together device. "You want to call your people?" Vex hesitated. "My people will come with weapons," he admitted. "They believe humans dangerous." Anna and Tom exchanged glances. "And what do you believe now?" Anna asked. Vex considered the question. Everything he had been taught about humans contradicted what he had experienced. These two had saved his life, cared for him, and now offered him a way home, expecting nothing in return. "I believe Archive's wrong," Vex finally said. "I must correct them." That evening, as stars appeared in the sky, Vex stood outside the human's dwelling, His communication device was ready, but he had not yet activated it. The cool night air carried scents his species had never catalogued. Pine trees, wood smoke, the lingering aroma of the meal they had shared. Tom joined him, looking up at the same stars. Your home is out there somewhere? Vex nodded. Far, very far. Will you tell them about us? About what happened here? Yes, Vex said firmly. We'll tell truth. Humans not what we thought. Tom smiled. We're not perfect. We've got plenty of problems, but most of us try to do right when we can. Vex activated the beacon. Within hours, his people would detect it and send a rescue ship. He would return home and face the skepticism of his commanders, the disbelief of the archivists. But he would persist. The truth about humans needed to be known. As they waited, Anna brought out cups of a warm beverage she called cocoa. The three of them sat in companionable silence, watching the stars. Thank you, Vex said, the words still unfamiliar on his alien tongue. For life, for truth. You're welcome, Anna replied, her smile genuine. Maybe someday our peoples can be friends. Vex looked up as a light appeared in the sky, his rescue ship approaching. He stood, facing his human saviors one last time. Not maybe, he said with certainty. We'll be friends, I make sure. And in that moment, on a small homestead on a planet his people had feared, Vex became an ambassador for a new understanding between species, all because two humans had chosen compassion over fear.